The Galactic Council chamber floated above a blue-white star, its light pouring through crystal walls like judgment. Thousands of species had argued here for centuries. Empires had risen, fallen, and been forgotten inside this room. Today, the council was bored. The agenda item was labeled Human Compliance Review. That alone made several delegates laugh. Humanity stood alone at the center platform, not surrounded by guards, not backed by fleets. Just three figures in plain diplomatic black, faces calm, hands folded. No weapons, no visible tech, no signs of fear. Counselor Zelrith of the Vorn Dominion leaned forward, his plated limbs clicking together. His species had ruled sectors for longer than human history itself. "Let us be brief," Zelrith said, his voice amplified across the chamber. "The Council has tolerated human unpredictability long enough." A ripple of agreement followed. Humanity has always been inconvenient, too fast to adapt, too stubborn to submit, too quiet when they should have begged. Counselor Sarai of the Luminar Concord laughed softly, light pulsing through her translucent form. "They still use independent command structures," she said. "No unified galactic oversight. No shared weapon restrictions. Primitive thinking." More laughter. The human delegates did not react. A massive hologram ignited in the center of the chamber. It showed human space, small, compact, boxed in by larger powers. Trade lanes marked in thin lines. Fleets labeled with outdated classifications. By unanimous vote, Zelrith continued, "The Galaxy Council demands the following." The hologram changed. Immediate dismantling of all long-range human military assets. Another change. Permanent inspection access to human core systems. Another. And submission to Council Security Authority. The words hung heavy in the chamber. "This is not a negotiation," Zelrith added. "This is mercy." The Council waited. The lead human representative stepped forward. His hair was gray. His face showed age, not weakness. His eyes moved slowly across the chamber, meeting gaze after gaze. "Humanity requests time," he said calmly. The chamber erupted in laughter. "Time? For what?" Counselor Sarai leaned closer. "You misunderstand," she said. "You are being corrected, not consulted." Another counselor spoke up. "Do you even have fleets left? Or did you scrap them to pay debts?" The laughter grew louder. The human representative nodded once. "We understand the terms," he said. "We ask for 7 cycles." Zelrith tilted his head. "Granted," he said dismissively. "Enjoy your preparation." The gavel struck. The session ended. As the chamber emptied, no one noticed the human delegates pause at the edge of the platform. No dramatic stare. No threat. Just a quiet activation of a small device. Far beyond the chamber, something ancient stirred. In deep space, long-abandoned human listening posts powered on for the first time in centuries. Beacons thought dead sent signals through dark corridors, no alien maps recorded. In forgotten shipyards hidden inside dead stars, lights flickered on. In human command vaults buried beneath oceans and mountains, sealed doors unlocked. Across human space, one message echoed through secure channels. Restraint protocols lifted. The Council, celebrating early, did not hear it. By the 3rd cycle, alien trade stations near human borders began reporting strange sensor errors. Ships vanished from scans for seconds at a time, then reappeared slightly off course. By the 5th cycle, unmanned probes sent into human territory failed to return. No debris, no radiation, just silence. Council analysts blamed malfunctions. On the 6th cycle, an automated Council observation array, older than most member species, went dark. That caused concern. A reconnaissance fleet was dispatched. Small, routine, confidence. It crossed into human border space. It did not send a distress call. It did not retreat. It did not explode. It simply vanished. On the 7th cycle, the Council reconvened in an emergency session. Humanity did not attend. No explanation arrived. No threat. No apology. Only silence. And for the first time in generations, the Galaxy Council felt something unfamiliar settle into the chamber. Not anger, not confusion, but fear. Because silence from a weak species meant surrender. But silence from humanity. It felt like something else entirely. The Galaxy Council did not panic at first. Panic was for younger species. Panic was for border wars and trade disputes. The disappearance of a small reconnaissance fleet was unusual, Yes, but not impossible to explain. That was what the analysts said. Solar interference, unknown gravity distortions. Human space was poorly charted. Accidents happened. Still, the chamber felt different. The great crystal walls shimmered as delegates gathered again, voices lower than usual. The empty human platform sat untouched at the center, its lights dimmed by council protocol after a missed session. Counselor Zelrith watched it longer than he liked. "Run the sensor logs again," he ordered. A massive projection bloomed above the floor. Star maps layered over each other, red markers blinking where data failed. The missing fleet's path ended cleanly at the human border. No explosion signatures. No debris field. No energy spike. They didn't retreat, an analyst said carefully. Navigation records show no turn back. Then where did they go? Another demanded. No one answered. Across the chamber, Counselor Sarai glowed faintly, her usual confidence dulled. Humans do not possess cloaking technology advanced enough to erase ships entirely, she said. At least, not on record. Zelrith clicked his mandibles. Then the records are wrong. That statement landed harder than expected. For the first time in decades, the possibility existed that the Council's intelligence was incomplete. Quietly, without public notice, deeper scans were authorized. Old arrays. Military-grade systems normally locked behind unanimous votes. As those systems activated, something strange happened. They didn't just fail. They returned data that made no sense. Distances warped. Timestamps disagreed with each other. Objects appeared where no mass should exist, then vanished between skin cycles. One technician removed his headset, trembling. "Sir, I think something is interfering with causality windows." That word froze the room. Causality interference was theoretical, dangerous, ancient. No species uses that kind of technology, Sarai said. Except, someone whispered. No one finished the sentence. Far from the council, in human space, the silence continued, but it was not empty. Hidden beyond standard lanes, beyond stellar drift patterns, human command structures unfolded like a waking giant stretching after a long sleep. There was no shouting, no speeches, no celebration. Only work. Admirals spoke in clipped tones. Operators reviewed lists sealed generations ago. Names of ships that officially did not exist were spoken aloud again. Some crews were descendants of crews. Others were volunteers who had trained their entire lives for a war they were told would probably never come. No one complained. No one hesitated. In the outer border system, where the reconnaissance fleet vanished, the truth was far colder than the Council imagined. The ships were still there, intact. Frozen in space, held inside a lattice of invisible force. Power cores suppressed, weapons disabled, crews alive, but unable to move, scream, or even fully understand what had happened. Human observation vessels drifted nearby, unmarked, angular, quiet. They did not broadcast. They did not threaten. They watched. Back at the council, rumors spread faster than data. Merchant guilds reported delays. Navigation beacons near human space began adjusting themselves without authorization, correcting drift before it happened. That should have been impossible. A junior delegate from a minor species finally said what everyone was thinking. "What if humanity is not reacting?" she said softly, "but finishing something they started long ago?" The room went still. Zelrith slammed a limb against the floor. Enough speculation. Humanity is a regional power at best. Their fleets are outdated. Their population fractured. They do not command fear. Even as he spoke, his voice lacked conviction. Another alert chimed. A council monitoring world, deep inside neutral territory, had lost all external communications for 30 seconds. 30 seconds. Then everything returned. Power. Systems. Atmosphere controls. No damage. No explanation. But every military database on the planet had been copied. Not hacked. Copied. Sarai's light dimmed further. That system is protected by council cipher layers older than most civilizations. Zelrith said nothing. The idea crept into the chamber like a slow poison. Humanity had not been idle during its years of silence. It had been watching, preparing, choosing restraint while mapping everything. Emergency sessions multiplied. Some council members argued for immediate escalation. Others urged caution. Smaller species began quietly pulling their assets away from council space. They remembered old stories, half-forgotten warnings, whispers of wars that ended without witnesses. One archive was finally unsealed. It had been buried not by humans, but by the Council itself. The record spoke of a conflict centuries ago, a crisis that nearly tore galactic space apart, an enemy that could not be negotiated with. The solution had not come from the great empires. It had come from a young species with terrifying adaptability. Humanity. The file ended with a note written in old council script. If humans ever stop asking for permission, pray they still remember mercy. The chamber fell into chaos. Zelrith stood slowly. We will send an ultimatum, he said. A final one. Sarai turned toward him sharply. That may be a mistake. Mistakes are better than fear, Zelrith snapped. The message was drafted quickly. Harsh. Absolute. A demand for humanity to appear, explain the fleet loss, and submit immediately, or be declared an existential threat. The broadcast was sent on all channels. It reached human space instantly. There was no reply. Instead, across the galaxy, something shifted. Stars did not explode. Fleets did not mobilize. But gravity waves rippled through key corridors. Hyperspace lanes recalculated themselves, subtly but unmistakably favoring human-controlled routes. Supply chains bent. Economies shuddered. It was not an attack. It was a demonstration of influence so precise it bordered on art. On the Council's central display, a new signal appeared. One channel. One source. Human origin. The chamber went silent as the transmission request appeared. Humanity was finally responding. But before the Council could accept it, a final report arrived. The reconnaissance fleet was transmitting again. No words. No cries. Just a single shared data packet. A visual. The fleet, frozen in space. And behind it, barely visible, stretching into darkness. Human ships. Waiting. The screen went black. And for the first time, the Galaxy Council understood something far worse than invasion was coming. Humanity had not stopped holding back. It had simply decided the lesson needed to be clear. The council chamber did not erupt into shouting this time. It went quiet. The image of the frozen fleet lingered in the minds of every delegate. Ships held like insects in amber. Crews alive, helpless, untouched. No damage. No chaos. Just control. That frightened them more than destruction ever could. Counselor Zelrith sat rigid in his seat, mandibles tight. He had ruled wars. He had ordered worlds blockaded. But this was different. This was not power used to dominate. This was power held back on purpose. We are being manipulated, he said at last. Psychological pressure. Nothing more. No one agreed out loud. Counselor Sarai drifted closer to the central platform, her glow dim and uneven. The data packet was not a threat, she said. It was proof. Proof of what? Zelrith snapped. Of capacity, she replied. And restraint. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Emergency lights flickered as the council authorized something that had not been accessed in generations. The sealed historical archives. Not public records. Not diplomatic summaries. War vaults. The kind of archives opened only when the present becomes dangerous. As the first files unlocked, the chamber filled with projections of old star maps. Borders that no longer existed. Species that no longer lived. A senior archivist stepped forward, voice shaking slightly. These records were classified after the first silent collapse, he said. Most council members are unaware they exist. Get to the point, Zelrith ordered. The archivist swallowed. Humanity was involved. The maps shifted. Centuries ago, the galaxy had faced an enemy that did not negotiate, did not retreat, and did not stop. It devoured systems, consumed stars, turned space itself unstable. The great empires of the time had failed. Their fleets were destroyed. Their technologies countered. Their worlds erased. Then the records showed something strange. A young species, barely spacefaring by galactic standards, entered the war. Humanity. They did not lead the alliance, the archivist said. They did not demand authority. They requested access. Information. Time. The next projections showed classified engagements. Human ships fighting in patterns no one else understood. Using physics not as rules, but as tools. The war ended. Abruptly. The enemy vanished. But so did the records. The cost, the archivist continued, was catastrophic. Entire human fleets erased. Worlds burned. Populations lost. Humanity requested the records be sealed to prevent panic and repetition. Sarai's light flickered. And we agreed? Yes, the archivist said quietly. Because the alternative was admitting the galaxy survived only because humans fought a war we could not. Silence swallowed the chamber. Zelrith felt something cold settle into his core. Humanity has not been weak. Humanity has been tired. Outside the council, the effects were spreading. Trade guilds reported routes failing, then correcting themselves seconds later, optimized beyond previous limits. Communication delays vanished where human relays existed. Systems once considered unstable became calm. It was as if the galaxy itself was being quietly adjusted. Human commanders watched it all from secure observation decks. They did not cheer. They did not celebrate. They remembered. Old veterans stood beside young officers and told them stories that never made the news. Battles that never had witnesses. Friends who never came home. This was not revenge. This was boundaries being redrawn. Back in the council chamber, panic finally arrived, but unevenly. Some delegates demanded surrender. Others demanded immediate war. Smaller species quietly disengaged from council networks altogether. They had seen enough. A junior council aide burst into the chamber, breathless. Counselors, multiple defense grids have been bypassed. Not breached. Bypassed. No alarms triggered. How? Zelrith demanded. We don't know, the aide said. It's like they were never there. The truth was worse. Humanity was not attacking infrastructure. It was demonstrating that infrastructure had never protected anyone from them. A single human transmission finally played, not a message, but a historical clip. Old, grainy, from a forgotten hearing. A younger human diplomat stood before an older version of the council. We will limit ourselves, the human had said then, because power without restraint terrifies everyone, including us. The clip ended. Sarai whispered, they warned us. Zelrith said nothing. Another report arrived. A council military world, heavily fortified, far from human space, had its orbital defenses disabled for exactly 10 seconds. 10 seconds was all it took. Every weapon went dark. Every shield collapsed. Then everything returned to normal. No damage. No casualties. A message appeared afterward on every screen. This was a test. We passed. Fear spreads openly now. The council attempted to respond, but their channels lagged. Their systems prioritized human data packets automatically, rewriting traffic flow without permission. Humanity had not seized control. It had revealed it was already there. A final emergency vote was called. Declare humanity a galactic threat. Authorize total war. The vote failed. Too many abstained. Too many remembered the frozen fleet. Too many understood that if humanity wanted war, this chamber would already be gone. Instead, a new signal appeared. Not a demand. Not a threat. An invitation. Coordinates. Neutral space. One meeting. Humanity was not asking. It was allowing the council a final chance to understand. Zelrith stared at the coordinates, mandibles trembling slightly. What happens, he asked quietly, if we refuse? Sarai answered him, voice steady but dim. Then the galaxy learns what humanity looks like when it stops pretending to be small. The chamber lights dimmed as systems adjusted themselves again, without orders, without permission. And far away, human fleets that had never officially existed changed orientation. Not toward the council, but toward the galaxy itself. Waiting. The meeting place was chosen by humanity. That alone unsettled the council. The coordinates lay in open space, far from any star or station. No gravity wells. No cover. A place where nothing could hide and no one could claim territory. When the council delegation arrived, they came with escorts. Too many of them. Heavy ships, layered defenses, weapons charged but silent. They expected intimidation. They did not expect emptiness. At the exact center of the coordinates floated a single human vessel. It was not large, not ornate, not aggressive in design. Matte black hull, smooth lines, no visible weapons, no markings. It did not transmit shields or power signatures strong enough to justify fear. And yet, every council sensor struggled to focus on it. Distance readings shifted. Mass estimates refused to settle. The ship seemed present and absent at the same time. This is a trick, Counselor Zelrith muttered. Counselor Sarai did not answer. Her attention was fixed on the vessel. She felt something old in her core, an instinct that had nothing to do with logic. The human ship transmitted a single request. Open channel. No threats. No countdown. Zelrith hesitated only a moment before signaling acceptance. The hologram flickered. A human appeared. Not armored. Not elevated. Just a woman standing in a simple command room. Short hair. Tired eyes. A uniform without decoration. She did not smile. Galaxy Council, she said evenly. Thank you for coming. Zelrith straightened. You stand accused of hostile action against Council forces, he said. Explain the disappearance of. We did not destroy your fleet, the human interrupted calmly. The interruption shocked the chamber. No species cut off Zelrith. We disabled it, she continued. Every ship, every weapon, every drive. No lives lost. That was an act of war, Zelrith snapped. The human shook her head once. No, that was restraint. The word hit harder than any insult. She continued, voice steady. You demanded submission. You attempted control. You assumed weakness because we chose not to display power. Sarai leaned forward. Why now, she asked. Why reveal yourselves at all? The human looked directly at her. Because you stopped listening. Silence filled the channel. For centuries, the human said, we accepted limits. Inspections. Mockery. Restrictions. Because peace mattered more than pride. Her eyes hardened slightly. But you crossed from cooperation into ownership. A new projection appeared between them. Human historical data. Wars erased from public record. Entire fleets marked as lost without explanation. Casualty numbers so large the council analysts froze trying to process them. We paid the price for this galaxy, the human said. Quietly. Repeatedly. And we asked for nothing in return except space to exist. Zelrith tried to interrupt again. You claim sacrifice without proof. The projection shifted. Live data. Council defense grids being bypassed in real time. Weapons locking and unlocking at human discretion. Entire fleets highlighted. Paths predicted before orders were issued. This is proof, the human said. Around the council delegation, warning lights flickered, then stabilized. Nothing had been damaged. Everything had been accessed. Fear finally broke through arrogance. Sarai's glow dimmed. What do you want? She asked. The human did not answer immediately. Instead, the projection changed again. Images of human worlds. Cities rebuilt after attacks no one remembered. Memorials with names written too small to read at scale. We want what we always wanted, the human said quietly. To be left alone unless invited. To defend ourselves without permission. To never again bleed in silence for those who laugh at us. Zelrith felt something shift inside him. And if the council refuses? He asked. The human expression did not change. Then nothing changes, she said. Except the illusion. She gestured, and the projection zoomed out. The galaxy appeared, mapped in stunning detail. Human routes overlaid everywhere. Trade flows. Communication paths. Weak points. We are not declaring war, she said. We are declaring honesty. A pause. From this moment forward, humanity will no longer hide its capacity. The channel cut. Not dramatically. Not violently. Just ended. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then chaos erupted. Some council members shouted for immediate retaliation. Others demanded negotiations. Smaller species began transmitting withdrawal notices from council authority. Zelrith stood frozen. For the first time in his long life, he understood the difference between power and dominance. Power did not need permission. Back in human space, reactions were measured. Civilians were informed with calm statements. No panic. No rallies. Just facts. Human fleets shifted position, not toward invasion, but toward defense. Borders hardened invisibly. Old treaties were quietly voided. Humanity was not expanding. It was drawing a line. Across the galaxy, species responded instinctively. Some moved closer to human trade hubs. Others pulled fleets back from council control. A few attempted to test the boundary. Those tests failed. Ships lost navigation. Weapons refused to fire. Crews returned home shaken but alive, carrying stories they struggled to explain. The council convened again without humanity present. This time, the chamber felt small. Zelrith looked around and saw fear on faces that had never known it. We underestimated them, he said quietly. Sarai nodded. No, she replied. We misunderstood them. Another report arrived. Multiple council member systems had quietly requested bilateral talks with humanity, outside council authority. The institution was fracturing. Zelrith realized then that the council had not been attacked. It had been made irrelevant. As the session ended, the empty human platform remained dark. Not because humanity had been silenced, but because it no longer needed the room. And far beyond the Council's reach, human fleets held positions, not advancing, not retreating, waiting, not for permission, but for the galaxy to decide what it would become next. The Galaxy Council chose war without calling it that. They named it a stability action, a limited operation, a show of authority meant to remind everyone who still claimed the center of the galaxy. Publicly, they framed it as containment. Privately, it was fear. Councillor Selrith stood before the remaining senior delegates as fleets assembled across multiple sectors. The chamber was louder now, not with confidence, but with urgency. Humanity has fractured our authority, he said. If we do nothing, we invite collapse. Some nodded. Others avoided eye contact. They have not attacked us, Sarai said quietly. They don't need to, Zelrith replied. That is exactly the problem. The decision passed by a narrow margin. A coalition strike group would move toward human border space, not to invade Earth, but to occupy key systems and force negotiations under pressure. It was meant to be controlled. It was not. The fleets launched in waves. Hundreds of ships, multiple species, layered command structures. The largest military movement in centuries. Across the galaxy, observers watched nervously. In human space, the response was calm. No emergency broadcasts. No speeches. No visible mobilization. Human command simply acknowledged the movement, then activated a single protocol. The coalition fleets crossed the first boundary marker without resistance. No mines. No warning shots. Human space appeared open, quiet, empty. Some commanders relaxed. That was their mistake. At precisely the same moment across all fleets, navigation systems froze. Not failed. I froze. Velocity locked. Course vectors locked. Manual overrides ignored. Panic spread as ships drifted in formation, unable to turn, jump, or fire. This is Fleet Command, a coalition admiral barked. Report status. One by one, replies came in. Weapons offline. Shields present but unresponsive. Communications internal only. They were not being jammed. They were being controlled. Human ships appeared then, not rushing, not dramatic. They emerged from angles no tactical doctrine predicted. Some unfolded from folded space. Others simply existed where nothing had been seconds before. They did not form attack lines. They formed observation arcs. Every coalition ship was surrounded, outnumbered not in quantity, but in positioning. A human transmission reached every trapped vessel. Clear, calm, identical. You have entered restricted space during a declared non-hostile period. You are not under attack. The words confused me more than they reassured me. One coalition captain screamed into the channel. Release our ships, or we will. His weapons interface went dark entirely. The transmission continued. Your fleets are disabled. Your crews are unharmed. This is not punishment. Human vessels drifted closer, close enough for visual confirmation. They were not beautiful. They were not intimidating by design. They were practical, scarred, quiet, built for outcomes, not appearances. On the bridge of the lead human command ship, officers watched biometric feeds from every coalition vessel. Heart rates elevated, stress levels spiking. No casualties. Hold, the human commander said. This was not revenge. This was a demonstration. Back at the council chamber, the situation unraveled in real time. Fleet status boards turned gray, neutralized, not destroyed. Zelrith stared at the data, disbelief cracking his composure. This is impossible, he said. No, Sarai replied softly. This is precision. Council members shouted over one another. Some demanded immediate surrender. Others demanded escalation, even as their own fleets hung helpless in space. A new message appeared on the central display. Human origin. Accepted automatically. The same human officer from before appeared. She looked unchanged. You sent fleets, she said evenly. We asked for understanding. Zelrith forced himself to speak. Release our ships. We will, the human replied. After the lesson is complete. The lesson, he demanded. She gestured, and the display shifted. Live feeds from coalition ships. Crews moving freely. Medical teams assisting those in shock. Human drones repairing minor damage caused by forced shutdowns. No one will die today, the human said. That is intentional. Her gaze sharpened. But understand this. Every weapon you brought here was rendered irrelevant before it powered up. Silence crushed the chamber. You chose force because you thought we would hesitate, she continued. You believed mercy meant weakness. She paused. You were wrong. Across the galaxy, reactions were immediate. Independent systems cut ties with the Council. Defense pacts dissolved overnight. Smaller species transmitted apologies to human space without being asked. The myth of Council invincibility collapsed in hours. On the trapped fleets, human vessels began disengaging. One by one, coalition ships regained control. Weapons came back online. Navigation unlocked. No pursuit followed. No retaliation. Just space. The human transmission returned one final time. This concludes the demonstration. And then they were gone. Not retreating. Not fleeing. Simply absent. Back in the council chamber, no one spoke for a long time. Zelrith sank into his seat. They could have destroyed us, he said. Sarai nodded. They chose not to. Another report arrived. Multiple council member worlds were holding internal votes to withdraw from centralized military command. The council was unraveling, not because it had lost a war, but because it had lost credibility. Far from the chamber, on human worlds, life continued. Children went to school. Workers returned to cities. Ships moved along trade lanes now safer than they had been in decades. Humanity did not celebrate. It was memorable. Old veterans watched the stars and wondered if restraint would ever be understood or only tested. The line had been drawn. The council had crossed it. And the galaxy now knew something it could never forget. Humanity did not need to conquer. It only needed to stop holding back. The galaxy did not sleep after the demonstration. Systems stayed awake. Councils argued through entire cycles. Military leaders stared at reports they did not understand. Old assumptions cracked everywhere at once. For humanity, there was no victory celebration, only remembrance. Deep beneath a human world's surface, far from public view, a chamber opened that had not been used in generations. The walls were smooth stone and metal, marked not with symbols of power, but names. Thousands of them. Human commanders gathered there in silence. No speeches, no applause, just quiet acknowledgement of why restraint had always mattered. An older human officer stepped forward. His hair was white now. His uniform carried no rank markings. This was never about the council, he said softly. It was about what happens when the galaxy forgets who paid the price. The chamber lights dimmed. Across the galaxy, humanity released something it had hidden for centuries. Not weapons, not threats, records. They were sent openly, unencrypted, distributed to every major archive, university, and public network. The files were labeled simply, "What we stopped." The first records showed the ancient enemy the archives had hinted at, a force that did not invade, it erased. Civilizations collapsed without warning. Physics broke down. Stars destabilized. Galactic empires had tried everything. Nothing worked. Then the footage changed. Human ships, early, crude by modern standards, throwing themselves into impossible battles. Human scientists are tearing apart reality itself just to slow the collapse. Human soldiers fighting wars where retreat meant extinction for everyone else. Casualty numbers scrolled past faster than most species could comprehend. Entire human worlds lost. Colonies burned to buy time. Fleets sacrificed to hold lines that no one else could even see. The galaxy watched in horror. Counselor Sarai stood alone in her chamber as the records played. Her glow dimmed almost to darkness. "They never told us," she whispered. "They did," replied a quiet voice behind her. Zelrith stood there, older somehow than he had been days before. "They asked us to forget," he continued, "and we were happy to do so." The records showed the aftermath. Human leaders standing before the council of that era. Exhausted, grieving, still restrained. They did not demand territory. They did not demand authority. They demanded silence. They asked the galaxy to move on, to rebuild, to never look too closely at what had saved them. And the galaxy agreed. Because remembering was uncomfortable. Back in the present, reactions spread like shockwaves. Entire species reevaluated their history. Wars they thought they had won. Disasters they blamed on chance. Peace they assumed was natural. None of it had been. Humanity has been the wall. And walls do not get thanked. Some council members publicly resigned. Others went into hiding. Smaller civilizations sent messages to human space. Not pleas, not bargains, just acknowledgments. We did not know. We remember now. Humanity did not respond to most of them. It was not necessary. In a distant human colony, a memorial broadcast played quietly in a public square. Not dramatic, not emotional, just names. Citizens stopped to watch. Some cried. Most simply stood still. Children asked questions their parents had never been allowed to answer before. Elsewhere, human fleets adjusted posture, not to threaten, but to protect corridors that had never been officially theirs. Pirate activity dropped overnight. Border wars froze. Not because humanity intervened directly, but because everyone knew it could. At the council, what remained of the institution attempted one last formal session. The chamber felt hollow now. The seats were empty. Voices lacked authority. Zelrith stood and addressed those who remained. We believe power meant control, he said. Humanity believed power meant responsibility. No one argued. Sarai drifted forward. They are not asking to rule, she said. They never were. What are they asking? Someone asked. Sarai answered honestly. To never be forced into silence again. As if summoned by the words, a new human transmission arrived. Not a broadcast, not a threat. A statement. It was read aloud across the council chamber and beyond. Humanity will no longer accept oversight from institutions that mistake restraint for weakness. We withdraw from council authority effective immediately. Gasps echoed. The message continued. We will defend our space. We will protect our people. We will intervene only when extinction is the alternative. No conditions. No demands. Just a line drawn in principle. The council voted to object. The vote meant nothing. Across the galaxy, systems updated treaties automatically, rewritten by reality rather than law. Trade routes rerouted through human-secured space by choice, not force. Former council fleets stood down, commanders unwilling to test boundaries again. Humanity did not expand. It stabilized, and that terrified those who had relied on chaos to hold power. On a remote observation post, a young human officer watched distant stars through reinforced glass. An older veteran stood beside her. Do you think they understand now? She asked. The veteran considered the question. They understand enough, he said. Understanding everything would break them. She nodded. Will we ever stop holding back? She asked. The veteran looked at the stars a long time before answering. We already stopped, he said quietly. What we're doing now is choosing what not to become. Far across the galaxy, a former Council War world dismantled its planetary guns voluntarily. Another signed a defensive pact with humanity, not as a subject, but as a neighbor. The age of forced authority ended not with fire, but with truth. And truth was heavier than any weapon. As the records continued to spread, one realization became impossible to ignore. Humanity was not dangerous because it was powerful. Humanity was dangerous because it remembered why it restrained itself. The galaxy had pushed too far, and now it had to live in a universe where the shield had decided to stand openly, not as a ruler, but as a warning written in memory, sacrifice, and choice. The galaxy did not collapse all at once. It unraveled, slowly at first, then everywhere. The Galaxy Council still existed on paper, but paper meant nothing anymore. Its authority had depended on belief that it could protect, punish, and decide the future. That belief was gone. One by one, member systems stopped responding to council directives. Military commands went unanswered. Trade sanctions were ignored. Emergency votes failed to reach quorum. Not because of rebellion, because no one cared enough to pretend. In place of fear, a new calculation spread through every major power. Humanity was not an enemy, but it was no longer a tool. That changed everything. Former council-aligned fleets returned home without orders. Admirals cited maintenance. Commanders resigned quietly. Some ships never reconnected to Central Command at all, choosing instead to remain near human-secured corridors where piracy had vanished overnight. Smaller civilizations moved first. They always did. Species that had never held seats of power opened direct channels to human space. They did not ask for protection. They asked for trade, for shared patrol routes, for stability. Humanity accepted selectively. No grand announcements. No flags planted. Just agreements written in plain language, enforced by quiet capability. Where human routes appeared, wars cooled. Old grudges lost momentum. It was hard to justify endless conflict when a calm, unmovable presence sat nearby, watching without judgment. On worlds that had thrived on chaos, panic grew. Arms manufacturers saw contracts vanish. Smugglers lost entire regions overnight. Political elites who had relied on council enforcement scrambled to find relevance. Some tried to provoke humanity. Those attempts failed quickly and quietly. A border skirmish flared near a disputed system. Two rival species moved fleets toward each other. Confident humanity would not interfere. Humanity did not fire a shot. Instead, hyperspace access collapsed across the region for exactly 6 hours. No ships could jump in or out. No reinforcements. No retreat. When access returned, the fleets had withdrawn on their own. The message was clear. Humanity was not enforcing peace. It was removing the option of escalation. Back on the former Council core world, the chamber lights dimmed permanently. Maintenance drones shut down. Public tours were canceled indefinitely. Counselor Zelrith walked through the empty hall one last time. The echoes of past debates haunted the space. "We thought we were eternal," he said quietly to no one. Sarai floated beside him, her glow faint but steady. "Eternity requires relevance," she replied. They stopped before the central platform. The human position remained dark. Zelrith exhaled slowly. "They could have taken this place." "Yes," Sarai agreed. "That is why they didn't." Elsewhere, humanity focused inward. Old command structures were dismantled. Emergency-only protocols were sealed again, but not erased. The lesson had been learned on both sides. Publicly, humanity spoke more openly than ever before. Not in threats. In stories. Veterans were allowed to speak. Histories once locked away were taught openly. Not to inspire fear, but to explain caution. Human children learned not that they were the strongest, but that strength carried weight. On a distant agricultural world, a farmer watched trade ships pass overhead, flying routes that had once been dangerous. His life had become simpler, safer, without him ever seeing a human soldier. That was the point. In regions where the council once enforced obedience, power vacuums formed. Some collapsed into chaos. Humanity did not rush in. It waited. When extinction-level threats emerged, real ones, not political excuses, human fleets moved with terrifying speed. Entire crises ended before most species even understood they had begun. Humanity did not announce these interventions. The galaxy found out later. That frightened some. It reassured others. A new phrase entered galactic language, translated differently across cultures, but carrying the same meaning. Human space is quiet. Not empty. Quiet. A place where violence did not echo. A place where escalation died before it began. Back among the former council powers, reckoning took many forms. Some leaders resigned publicly, admitting fault. Others tried to rewrite history, claiming they had always supported humanity. The record said otherwise. Humanity did not correct them. Truth no longer needed defense. One former council world attempted to rebuild the institution under a new name. New charters. New symbols. Same assumptions. Humanity ignored it. The attempt failed within months. The galaxy had moved on. On a human command station overlooking a spiral arm, the same human officer who had spoken to the council watched data streams scroll past. Trade volumes stabilizing. Conflict probability dropping. Migration flows normalizing. An aide approached. "Multiple systems are requesting observer status," he said. "Observer to what?" she asked. "To us," the aide replied. She considered that. "No," she said finally. "Tell them to observe themselves. We're not building another council." The aide nodded, relieved. Far away, a young alien diplomat studied human history in a shared archive. She paused at the final section, marked ongoing. She realized something then that many others were slowly understanding. Humanity had not replaced the council. It had replaced the idea that order required domination. That frightened those who needed hierarchy. It empowered those who wanted stability. As years passed, maps changed. Borders softened. Influence became measured not by fleets, but by trust. Humanity did not sit at the center of the galaxy. It stood at the edges of catastrophe. And that was enough. On the anniversary of the council's collapse, no celebrations occurred. Humanity marked the day quietly, not as a victory, as a reminder. Because restraint was not a weakness. It was a choice. And choices could always be tested again. The galaxy had learned what happened when it pushed too far. Now it lived in a universe where the strongest species had chosen not to rule, but had made it very clear what would happen if it ever had to. The galaxy learned to breathe again. Not because everything was safe, not because danger was gone, but because the pressure that had built for centuries, control layered over fear layered over silence, had finally released. No single moment marked the end of the old age. There was no explosion, no final battle, no declaration carved into stone. There was only adjustment. Trade flowed differently now, not centered on authority, but on reliability. Routes that passed near human space became preferred not because humanity demanded it, but because nothing went wrong there. Pirates vanished. Border wars faded. Not ended, faded. As if violence itself had learned it was no longer welcome. Humanity did not announce a new era. It lived one. On Earth, the Council crisis became a chapter in history books, taught without triumph. Children learned the facts plainly. Humanity had been pushed, humanity had responded, and humanity had chosen restraint again, this time openly. No statues were raised to commanders. No holidays declared victory. Memorials remained quiet places, unchanged. Because the story was never about conquest. It was about a line. Across the galaxy, former Council worlds struggled with something unfamiliar. Choice. Without an authority to blame or hide behind, they had to decide who they were. Some failed. Some adapted. Some grew stronger without ever firing a weapon. Others faded, and humanity let them. That, more than anything, unsettled the galaxy. In a distant academic world, a symposium gathered scholars from dozens of species. They debated humanity endlessly. Were humans benevolent? Were they dangerous? Were they temporary? The oldest scholar present, one of the few who had lived long enough to remember the sealed war, ended the debate quietly. Humanity is not a ruler, he said. It is a boundary. The room fell silent. Boundaries did not command. They defined. Human space remained quiet. Not empty. Quiet. Human fleets stayed dispersed, never concentrated. Always visible enough to be known. Never close enough to feel oppressive. When disasters struck, real ones, humanity intervened with speed that still stunned observers. Collapsing stars stabilized. Plagues contained. Rogue weapons were neutralized before broadcasts could even form. Human ships arrived. Human ships solved the problem. Human ships left. No speeches. No demands. Over time, the phrase changed again. It became simpler. If humans arrive, the danger is already ending. In a former Council Core world, the Great Chamber was finally closed. Not abandoned, repurposed. It became a museum. Visitors walked beneath the crystal walls and read the history of the Galaxy Council. Its rise, its influence, its collapse. At the center platform, the empty human position remained untouched. A plaque rested beside it. It read, "This seat was never claimed." Counselor Sarai visited once, alone. She hovered before the plaque longer than she intended. "We thought power needed permission," she said softly. "You proved it only needs restraint." She left without ceremony. Zelrith never returned. On a human frontier station, the same veteran who had spoken before stood watching ships pass beyond the viewport. The stars looked calm tonight. The young officer stood beside him again. "They still talk about us," she said. "Some fear us. Some admire us." He nodded. "They always will." "Does that bother you?" she asked. He considered the question. "No," he said. "What would bother me is if they stopped remembering." "Remembering what?" "That we chose not to end them." She was quiet for a moment. "Will they push again?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Someone always does. And then we remind them." Far away, on a small world near the edge of known space, a species humanity had never formally contacted dismantled its planetary cannons on its own. No treaty, no request. They had watched the galaxy change. They understood enough. In the deepest archives of human command, the restraint protocols remained unlocked, but monitored. Not dormant, not forgotten. Ready, but not eager. Because humanity had learned something the galaxy was still catching up to. Power used once defines you forever. Power restrained defines you every day. The moment humanity stopped holding back was not when fleets froze or systems bent. It was when humanity stopped pretending its strength was accidental, and still chose not to rule. Years later, long after the Council faded into history, a new generation of species grew up knowing a simple truth. There was a line in the galaxy, not marked on maps, not enforced by law. A line written in memory, sacrifice, and choice. and everyone knew what happened if it was crossed. Humanity did not threaten. Humanity did not boast. Humanity waited, not because it was weak, but because it remembered what came after. And that, more than any weapon or fleet or empire, was why the galaxy endured. Because when pushed too far, humanity did not break. It stood, and the universe adjusted around it.